Okay, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this review. We're talking about the skin and just any other things that I happen to see as I look through this exam to make sure that we're all there. By no means is the exam written in such a way to trick you, you know, intentionally tank your efforts here. The exam is just the only way I have of judging whether you understand this information. So be prepared for those sorts of questions where I'm asking you to put some of the pieces together. I can't emphasize that enough. I'm not going to ask you, do lipids freely cross the cell membrane? I'm going to ask you, which of these can freely cross the cell membrane? And you have to be able to pick out which one of them is a lipid. So, for instance, you should know that steroids are lipids, and fatty acids are lipids, and etc. So, just be prepared for that sort of thing. Solubility and absorption through the skin, all of that comes together. Now, for the skin, there are some things that you need. For instance, you need to know the layers of the skin, the epidermis, the dermis, tissue that is. Epidermis is stratified squamous epithelium. The dermis is connective tissue proper. Layers of the epidermis, I'm not going to ask you to put them in order or anything. You should know kind of what they are. Know what those cells do. You should remember that the oldest cells are in the stratum corneum. So the outermost layer of the skin. Stratum basale, the basal layer, you should know what we see there. You should sites are. Sites make melanin. Melanin's a photopigment. It protects found it again in the stratum basale. Whenever the skin is exposed to ultraviolet light, those melanocytes release melanin. Let's see. The loss of those dead skin cells in the stratum corneum, that's exfoliation or desquamation. The other functions of the skin in terms of overall maintenance of homeostasis, right? It's there for protection, it's a barrier, insulation, that sort of thing. And really, like I said, focus on the big picture. I'll ask about proteins, obviously. I'm not going to ask that you understand the structure of like amino acids. I'm not going to ask you what different carbohydrates are. I'm really, really concerned with this big picture concept so that you understand like permeability of the cell membrane. That's going to be so important as we go forward. That you understand the difference between active and passive transport. It's going to be so important as we go forward. Knowing primary and secondary active transport are. So make sure that you're going back and looking at those things and what these different cells can do, and this process of growth of the skin. Remember that the skin cells that are on your surface of that stratum corneum are dead cells. They're keratinized cells. They underwent apoptosis in the stratum granulosum. They died on purpose. So that they become that outer layer and they're dead keratinized cells. So again, I'm very concerned with this idea this sort of big picture, putting the pieces together thing. This first exam should not be difficult. If you've gone over the stuff and you know your stuff, you should have no issues here, because I'm not going to ask you anything that's sort of out of your range here. Focus on the stuff that we did today as these different reviews post. Look at the big picture concepts and everything will be fine. Don't worry about, like, you know, aerobic respiration. Know that the mitochondria make ATP. Don't worry about transcriptase and DNA replication. Oh, there's something. You don't need to know the phases of mitosis. I'm not going to ask you those phases of mitosis. You should know that mitosis gives you two identical cells. Mitosis is for growth or repair. For reproduction, we get two identical cells. So mitosis, growth and repair, two identical cells. Now, I don't care about the phases, prophase and metaphase. That's not important. You're going to have to recognize a cell in any of the different phases, or tell me what the different phases are. You should know that not all cells that don't divide are called amitotic cells. Cells that are amitotic are said to be in the gap zero phase of mitosis. Just never divide. So skeletal muscle fibers, cardiac muscle fibers, this sort of thing. That gap zero phase of the cell cycle. But no, I'm not worried about the big picture, like step-by-step nature of stuff. Look at the concept. That's what's important. So I'm going through and looking, and it appears that we've been over everything that's on this exam, some of it in a lot of detail. Oh, there we go. There's one I missed. Definitely know your characteristics of epithelium. Or connective tissue, or both. So, and or connective tissue. Epithelial tissue, just a bunch of cells, right? Specialized junctions between the cells that's supported by connective tissue. It's avascular, but it's innervated. It's always regenerating. There are epithelial things, right? There's two sides. There's an apical surface and a basal surface. Okay. So with that, I believe we've been over everything that's on this exam. If you have any questions, you're welcome to email me. I'll answer them as best I can. You've got a pretty long window to take the exam, so don't stress out about it. Your lab will also come around the same time. Now, your lab is just identifying those structures on the skull. Again, that should be really straightforward, and this should not be difficult at all. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll send out an announcement exam about the use of the proctoring software and how that's going to work, and explaining that process. But that will be when the exam shows up tomorrow. That's all for the review. If you look at older reviews on YouTube that are mine, keep in mind that they are older and the references that are there might not pertain to your class. If they weren't posted in your Blackboard like this one, it's an older review, and while the material's the same, the indications might not be. So there might be references to when you get to class, or I don't know, dated jokes, knowing me. So ignore any sort of references to stuff that doesn't involve you. This exam is not open notes. You do have to use the proctoring software. Yeah, so that's it for now. If you have any questions, like I said, drop me an email, and I'm happy to answer whatever you've got.